Why, hello, and welcome back to another episode of Voice of the Rings. I am your host and guide, Zollin Ironshield, and today we're going to do another Lord of the Rings LOTRO guide, and we're going to do a real quick stat overview. Learning about stats. Alright, so if you're brand new to LOTRO, most people are going to know this if you're a long-time LOTRO player, but we're going to do beginner stuff and then some advanced stuff in this video, okay? So the beginner stuff is, we'll start with the health bar up here and the mana bar. What do these mean, right? So there's a couple different classes that are gonna have a couple different things. For example, Bjornings have a type of rage that builds up over their little fighting bar down here, a little rage bar, or they have a separate one. Runekeepers have a little atonement, which is like one goes into their damage and one goes in their healing, depending on what they have they can use during that time. Champions have a fervor buildup, more of like a rage as well. And then Brawlers have metal. They have a new stat too as well to build up. And then, that's pretty much it for the extra special things. And then there's really morale and power. So for people who don't know LOTRO terms, that is your HP health or your constitution if you're a D&D player, which is your green one, which is your health. And then you can do it as percent bar in the UI settings, or you can do it as a amount of health out of amount of health. I like to see my actual health, so I have 373,277, and you can see slash bar in between. It kind of tells you your total is on the right, or on the left is your total health that you have, and the one on the right is the one you currently have. So if you're being attacked and the green bar is going down, it'll tell you the difference right there. And then you got your power, or your mana, or your, whatever you want to call it. In D&D, it wouldn't really have a good comparison, probably. It's your constant intelligence. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Moving on. It doesn't matter. It's your power. It's your mana, right? In Lord of the Rings Online, it's called power. It is the resource you expend to use abilities. So let me just hover an ability. For example, Force Open. This is what I just swing my axe and slash at someone. As you can see there, it says cost 342 power. Okay, so that's how that will go down. If you run out of that, you're not going to be able to cast abilities, right? A lot of times you have abilities that give stuff back like that. For example, I have an ability called Catch Breath as a Guardian. Lots of characters have this. Not just like this. Guardian's one is pretty powerful. But other people have mana restores and heals and stuff like that. But it restores 35% of my maximum morale, right? Again, that is the top one, the green one. And it restores 10% of my maximum power, okay? Which is the blue one, which is great. It's a great ability, all right? So, catch your breath, haha. I get it, you get it now, right? So now that you know what morale and power are in this game, right? Morale, the green one, power is the blue one. Now let's talk about stats. So if you click C, or you click this little picture down here in the bottom right here, this one, or you click the letter C, it'll open your character panel. This is where you'll get lots of information. You're gonna have basic information like this, but there will be another button here at the top that says show all stats. So let's click that and open that up real quick. So now, again, here is your morale and power, like you see in your health bar up here, and armor, okay? So these are the three ones that really matter. Your armor class will depend on, right, different class you play. For a Guardian's sake, we wear heavy armor. I can use a big heavy shield, all right? So we can use heavy shield. So I'm gonna put on my shield and my one-handed axe so we can see this difference. You notice my HP went way up too because my item and shield had a lot more stats for HP. So now that we can look at this, and you can see the difference of that total I was talking about as it heals up as my out of combat moral regen, which is important. So if you hover the moral in this one, it'll say the amount of damage you could take before being defeated in combat. Defeated, dead, killed, right? In this game, Lord of the Rings Online, you are never killed, you are defeated, and you're sent back to the end mode where you revive or respawn, right? All right, so again, it's basically you died, but that's the lore of this game. Because they don't want to go through and be saying like you are reviving all the time like Gandalf did, right? Because that's the lore. Gandalf revived. Yeah, he was resurrected. Your character can't be in the lore, right? So you get defeated. Morale, power gives you a little more stats there. Now, if you hover the armor, this reduces the damage you take from attacks, all right? So this matters how much you have. Right now I have, it says I have 630. I feel like I should have more than that. I think it's glitching out. 1 second. Yeah, it's definitely glitching out. Excuse me. It's not glitching out. There's not a slash there. It's a cup. It's 637,000 636. I didn't actually realize. I've just happened to be very similar numbers there on the second part of it. But again, it reduces the damage taken from attacks, okay? This is an armor value. When you hover these, they will explain, as I'm reading right there, right? 20% of your armor value is added to your common mitigations, which is cool, okay? So the more armor you have, the more, what does that mean, non-combat mitigations? Well, if you run down here to the bottom, you can see that there is some different mitigations here. Tactical, and it'll explain that and all that stuff too. But offensive, where is it? The defensive, light resistance, mitigations. It should be the, I'm looking for the, yeah, non-combat ones are the tactical and physical mitigation, I believe. Tactical mitigation is the fire mitigation, yeah. Anyway, that's not important. You don't need to, that doesn't matter. Moving on. All right, so now if you are confused on what stat should you be using, right, as a new player for your class, well, the simplest way to know right off the bat when you start a new character is just hover between might, agility, vitality, will, and fate. And whichever one says, as a whatever class you are, something is very important to you, okay? That is telling you that's the stat you need to stack, okay? Mainly, right? So as you can see for me as a guardian, if I hover agility, it says as a guardian, agility increases your critical rating, parry rating, and evade rating, okay? But it says, if I hover might, it says as a guardian, might is very important for you, okay? There's the little trick word, very important for you. That's the thing you have to remember as a new player, right? If you're learning the game. Might increases your physical mastery rating, block, and parry rating, all right? So that's what you need to know. So again, as you can see, same thing for vitality. So vitality and might are the big two for guardians. Usually if you're a more tactical class, you're gonna want fate and will, right? If you're a minstrel or a rune keeper, those are gonna be the ones that'll say are very important. It'll probably say vitality is important for you too, because it helps too. But let's talk about what do these five stats do, right? The main stats in Lord of the Rings Online. Again, it has a very D&D feel to it, being might and all this kind of stuff. But I definitely like the system. Some people don't, but it's very simple once you understand it in Lord of the Rings Online. I think that's what I like about it. It's a very simple system once you understand it. So might, it says, increases the physical mastery rating, block, and parry rating. So some of those are self-explanatory, some of them aren't. Physical mastery rating basically is the damage you do with physical damage, okay? And one other thing. So if you go down, you can actually find physical mastery rating under this. You could hover it. It now tells you. It increases your melee damage and range damage dealt by you. Range damage like by a bow, okay? Not magical range damage, like a bow, okay? I use a bow as a guardian too, so that's what it does. And it says right there below it, it splits it up to physical melee. You do 169% physical damage to enemies that are at your level. That matters too, right? So if they were 3 levels above me, I do slightly less damage, right? Just a little comparison there. If they're below me, I'll do more damage. So increases the damage of your physical ranged attacks against levels same by 154%. All right, so my bow. There you go. Now you know. So now next one. So now that you know that, what is parry and block rating from might, right from the might stat? Well, you can go down to parry and block and see what those do. It says parry provides a chance to completely avoid an enemy's attack, provides a chance to partially avoid an enemy's attack, and reduces damage taken by a partial avoided attack. Okay. So this is where it can get confusing, and I want to make this very simple for you guys. There are basically 3 types of crits and 3 types of parry, block, or evade, okay? So, for example, a parry, again, it says right there below that sentence that I read, against a level 133 enemy, your chance to parry an attack is 12.2% chance, okay? So that means you completely, it'll say parry over your head, and you will not take damage from that attack. Then there's your chance to partially parry an attack is 11.5% chance, and I believe those add up for a total of, the 20, whatever, in that. Partial parry means you'll slightly take some damage from it. So it's like, think of, you parry a weapon, and it doesn't hit you straight in the face where you're gonna die, but it scratches you. Whoop. Or knocks off your headset. That too. Yes, well, sorry that. And then when you partially parry an attack, damage is reduced by, there's 2. Excuse me, I said there were 3 things. There are 2 different parries. parry and partial parry. And then it says when you partially parry an attack, the damage is reduced by 16.1% chance. I knew I was thinking something wrong. Critical is a 3 thing, and I'll explain that in a moment. I believe it's a 3 thing. I will look at it. And then the same thing with evade. Again, evade, there is something very interesting about block, parry, and evade that you should know as a new player. Blocking will only work if you have a shield equipped. If I unequip my shield, I will show you right now, if I drag the shield and take it in my inventory, block will just now say NA, you cannot block. You have to have a shield equipped to block, okay? Unless you're a special character that says otherwise, but there's very few exceptions to that. Parrying only works if you have a weapon. So if I take off my axe, parrying will no longer work. If I take off both, evading will always work, because evading is evading. It's kind of self-explanatory, right? You get it. Moving on. So again, evade has a 2.9% chance to evade, and then a 4.5% chance to partially evade, which you will still take when you partially evade. An enemy's damage is reduced by 6.4%. So not a lot. But it still helps. Now block, I have an 8.3% chance to block, and your chance to partially block is 13.3%, and it explains it. I take 18.7% less if it's a partial block. All right, good. So that's how the blocking works. And again, if we go back to might stat, it gives block and parry, which are super important because you're trying to take hits as a guardian. That's why might's important to you. Physical mastery rating also matters with your shield bashes because they're physical damage, right? That's why might is so important for a guardian, and for other people like champion or things like that. Agility. So this increases my critical rating, parry, and evade. Again, it doesn't add a whole lot. It does matter, again, why it's very important, because if you notice, different stats add a certain different percents, depending on your class as well. But we're not going to go into that, because that'll get confusing. I'm trying to teach you about the new stats if you're a new player, or need a refreshing course. So critical rating, this is great, but critical rating is also provided by Fate. Usually they're all the same across the board, but again, agility gives you some critical rating. I like to usually get weapons that give a flat critical rating. It's usually better than giving agility. So for example, if I hover, let's find one that gives that. Here we go, this ring I have. It gives 28,000 critical rating, right? So what is critical rating? Well, let's talk about critical rating as we go. We're going to hold on agility. We'll talk about critical rating real quick, and crits, because this is what I'm going to talk about next. Critical rating is basically the chance to crit someone, which means do extra damage, devastating hits, right? So that's basically the idea. It increases the critical hit chance and magnitude of your melee, ranged, and tactical damage. So if you do any magic damage, this works the same for magic, ranged melee, ranged physical damage, and melee physical damage, right? It works for, those are the 3 kinds of damage, right, that you can do. And on a side note, there are slight differences depending on what your weapon does in damage. For example, my weapon is a melee weapon, but it does a Belinar damage. So if something is weak to a Belinar damage, like an evil, usually Belerind damage is good against evil creatures, usually like ghosts and stuff. So it usually helps to have that instead of having common damage. Common damage means your axe has no kind of magical properties or whatever, or special crafting from the elves. It's just a common axe, right? Moving on. Okay, so let's not get too, I don't want to get too complicated for you guys. I want it to be a simple video to follow. So we got 3, remember I told you 3 kinds of crits. So let's look at the top one there, melee crit rate hit, right? So your critical hit chance of your melee attacks is 13.3%. Your devastating hit chance is 3.1%. Okay, so I do take back one thing I said at the beginning. I said there are 3 kinds of crits. There's not. There's 2 kinds of crits. Just like there's 2 kinds of blocks, 2 kinds of evades, and 2 evades. I was thinking normal hit. That's why I said 3. There's a normal hit, which means you do your flat damage. Then there's a critical hit, which my character has a 13.9% chance to critically hit, which is a double damage, or basically it's about double damage, usually with a crit. And then there's a devastating hit chance of your melee attacks, this is the big one, right? 3.1% chance. The magnitude of a critical or devastating hit is increased by 11.6% chance. Okay, so it's not double. I'll take that back too. It tells you right there what it is. So it's 11.6% chance for a melee crit, and then I'm assuming a devastating crit is probably double that. So it's probably 23 point, right, 2% chance, right? Because it's 2 of those. Devastating is, right, hit chance of your melee attacks. All right, so pretty cool. There you go. You know how that works now. Then the same thing for ranged and tactical. Mine are all the same. Again, I don't do a lot of tactical damage as a Guardian. I do have an ability where I roar, war chant that does light damage, so there's a chance for that. And then my ranged bow attack from a ranged one, right? So, but again, I'm not a minstrel or a rune keeper or a lore master who do tons of tactical damage because they're basically magic, right? So now that we know that with agility, let's hop back to agility. So we talked about parry and evade already. Again, it helps, but might gives me parry too. It gives me a lot more. So might's the stat for me as a Guardian. Again, look for the one that's very important to you, okay? So now we're gonna talk about vitality. Vitality is a huge one, okay? It's really huge for most characters. This is the stat that keeps you alive. It's that green bar up there on the top left. It is your maximum morale. As a Guardian, it's very important to me. It increases my maximum morale, my resistance ratings, which is huge, and non-combat morale regen. What is non-combat versus in combat? Well, I feel like you could follow that. Non-combat means you're not fighting anymore, you're not fighting a creature, you're just standing there. Your health is going to regen a lot faster. There's also an in-combat morale regen, which is increased by fate, I believe. Yes, it is. It is increased by fate. I thought it was. So maximum morale, vitality, this is great, right? You want to have as much of this as you can get pretty much on every character because you don't die as fast. So vitality is great for that. Resistance rating, that is great because resistance rating, if you hop down here, we can find resistance rating right here under Light of Earendil, right? And it says provides a chance to avoid all effects. Your chance to avoid all effects is 15.4%. This means pretty much from everything, being like poison, fear, wound. I have a one on combat that talks about this, a video on combat if you want to know more about that. But poison, fear, wound, all of those things, okay? It helps against all of those. So it's very helpful to help you not get those things on you, okay? So very, very important. And then the non-combat morale regen is very helpful as well. So how much you heal out of combat. There you go. By the way, if you hover your maximum morale, it actually tells you right there. See, my regeneration per minute while in combat is 34,000. And my regeneration out of combat is 605,000 per minute. Okay, so that's why it's good to have both of those. But good. Now let's hop into will. What does will give you? Tactical mastery rating, tactical mitigation, resistance rating. Oh, look at that! It gives us more resistance rating. Not very much though for a Guardian. Better for a lore master or a minstrel or a rune keeper. It'll be important for them. Tactical mastery rating. We already talked about mastery rating, what physical mastery rating is. Now if I have a tactical, I don't have very much. As you can see, my physical mastery rating, let's just talk about it real quick again. It's 710,000. We already talked about it. It gives physical to those things. Tactical mastery rating, the only thing this is going to affect is my roar, my light roar here that gives light damage, right? War chant. Again, that's more of a debuff. I don't really use it anyway. So it also, offensively, it does increases your damage you deal. Tactical outgoing healing, it increases the healing you do. That's why minstrels need tons of will. It's one of your main stats because it increases how much you heal your fellowship, right? So tactical mastery rating is important. That's one that will gives you. Tactical mitigation. This is kind of important for me as a Guardian, right? Because I'm taking damage, right? But also, we go back to vitality. It also gives maximum morale. I think I have a lot of items that give tactical mitigation too, which is important. But if I hover one of these, let's find it. There we go, right there. See that hero's earring? I get 36,000 tactical mitigation. So now if we go to tactical mitigation, which is down here at the bottom, we hover this. What does tactical mitigation protect you from? Well, it protects you from a few things. So gotta be people on level. So I'm level 133. So it reduces incoming tactical damage by 30.3%. Okay, I know this is getting a little wordy, so I'll try not to go too crazy into this. But what is tactical damage, right? Well, it's fire damage, lightning damage, frost damage, acid damage, shadow damage. Okay, those 5 things. All right, you can see them all right there. It reduces them all by the same amount. So it is important to me as a Guardian to have tactical mitigation. if I'm taking someone that has a lot of magic. But again, if I hover physical, which physical happens a lot more in the game, it feels like. Tactical is usually from a spell or from a creature. It's not quite as common as a normal attack, like an arrow or a sword coming at you. But I take 53.9% less physical mitigation. And then it says Orccraft mitigation, I take 13% left. Fell Rot mitigation, I take 13. These are two different kinds of damage from an orc or from fell creatures. All right, type of thing. So again, very important. We're gonna hop back up to Will again. Resistance rating we already talked about. So now let's talk about Fate. Okay, I'm trying to do this in a very orderly fashion, going back to the buff, right? The stat. So now Fate, as a Guardian, Fate increases your critical rating. We already talked about critical rating, what it does. Your in-combat moral regen, this is very important for me. How fast I heal myself in combat. Your power regen, your tactical mitigation, and your resistance rating, and your finesse. So a whole lot of stats filled into Fate. This is really important for people like Runekeepers and people that do magic damage. But let's talk about the ones we haven't talked about. So we talked about critical rating. We talked about tactical mitigation just a second ago. We talked about resistance rating, what it does. We talked about in combat and morale and power regen, which pretty self-explanatory. It's your in combat. Again, we talked about morale. We didn't talk about power. If I hover power, I regenerate 19,000 per minute while in combat and 268,000 per minute out of combat. Okay, so that's good to know. But now let's talk about finesse. This is a big one. We're going to talk about finesse. Finesse reduces your opponent's resistance and their block, parry, and evade chance. So this is a stat that basically, if someone has a whole lot of blocking, evading, all that kind of stuff, if you're a damage dealer, you want a lot of finesse, right? If you're an archer like a hunter, or you're a runekeeper, or someone that's trying to do a lot of damage, right? Champion, you're gonna want to have a lot of finesse. Everyone wants some finesse, right? So my finesse reduces my opponent's approximately by 19.4%, and that their resistances and their block, parry, and evade by 19.4% across the board. So really good, right? That's what finesse does. Now we know basically what every stat does. And again, which one's important will depend on your race. Your class. And you can check that by hovering it and seeing which one says is very important to you right there. Okay. So now let's talk about, we talked about critical rating, finesse, physical mastery rating, tactical mastery rating. What are these other things? What is Light Earendil? Okay, so this is actually a thing you kind of earn or get over time for the certain level. It's the dread system. So if you know about the dread system, it's actually, if you look up here at the top of the map, I need to explain it real quick for you. If I hover this little thing right here at the bottom right of the mini radar up there, that little like glowy circle, and this little thing pops up and it says, your heart is light, one hope. Okay? So that's where you generically sit a lot, right? One hope. There's a hope and dread system that is pre-50, 50, and it's in 60, excuse me, the level caps, where basically the more hope you have, the more you get a little increase to your maximum morale and your damage, and the more dread you have, it reduces those. And you have to fight it basically by using like an item, like I have this hope horn, that gives me +1 hope, so if I hover it now, I have 2 hope. I believe the reason I had 1 hope was because of we're in Parry. I just had a basic flat hope increase. But when you go into some dungeons and some raids and some instances, they will give you dread. So that's why you have to have a hope token usually, which is this. I'll hover it right here. Gives me 5 hope, and it'll increase your. It'll kind of counter if you get 5 dread in there. You counter it with a hope token to get 5 hope, and then you're back at normal health. Okay, so that's what that is for. But this Light of Earendil is another stat that came around in Mordor, I believe, and it is a stat that basically you earn from doing some stuff over time. I forget what off the top of my head, but it's a stat you'll need to earn while you're doing stuff there, and it'll counter area locations you're in that basically give kind of the similar thing to the dread system. Okay, so that's what that is. That's a higher level one than the dread system to counteract that kind of stuff. I had 80. Again, you will earn it by doing, I believe it's a, off the top of my head, it's literally been 4 or 5 years since I've done it, so I can't think of I did it on this character, and I haven't done it recently, but it's a quest or deed. If you know, leave a comment, and I'll like it for you guys. If you remember what exactly you have to do. Is it a quest or deed? It's not an item of armor, because I don't have any of that on right now. I thought it was, but it's not. It's not like the dread. It might be an item, now that I'm thinking about it, though. I feel like there was an item you earn, and then you convert the item into the buff that you permanently get, like a passive stat. But anyway, that's okay. Critical defense. All right, this is a big one to know. This comes from your armor, so if this will help you from your armor. Critical defense, and you can also get it as a flat stat sometimes. This basically melee critical defense reduces the magnitude of incoming critical hits, devastating hits, by 8.5%. So if you get crit, you know how crit works, right? We talked about it. This works for range, tactical, all of them. It'll reduce them slightly, okay? So it's kind of the counteraction to crits, critical defense. Kind of common sense. Incoming healing. This is just a flat stat that you can get on some items, right? I believe some of my items have this incoming healing right there. That the hero's ring gives me that, right? This basically means if I heal myself, right, with a like warrior's heart that gives me a heal or catch a breath, or if a minstrel's healing me or someone's healing me, I'll get 10.8% more healing. Okay? We talked about all the avoidances. We talked about the sources of damage and what physical and tactical mastery rating. So we've covered it, you guys. We've covered stats. We've gone through stats together. It took us under 30 minutes. I'm proud of us. We've done it. If you're here at the end of the video, that's fantastic. I hope this helped you out. Please leave a comment. If I missed something, you're a little confused on something, I will do a more descriptive video later, or in the comments, I will talk it out for you guys, so you guys will all understand that. You guys all have a wonderful day in Middle Earth. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode today on talking about stats, an updated video on stats 2022. And you guys have a wonderful day in Middle Earth, my friends. I'm your host and guide, Zollin Ironshield. Thank you so much to my Patreons. You guys are all awesome. I have a new shield guard. That's so cool. And I will see you guys all in the next episode of Voice of the Rings. Subscribe button's right there if I earned it. You should check out my main entertainment content. Will be down there in the bottom left of LOTRO Tale, and guide playlist next one will be up there. So you guys have a wonderful day in Middle Earth. See ya.